and welcome to the last project in our Christmas in July 2023 event. For this project we're going to be creating a mixed media project. We're just going to use inks and paints to create the background. There's some stamping and some stenciling, and then we're just going to add a lot of flowers and the gears that we create. Okay, in the next part I'm going to run through all the supplies that you need to be able to create. For this workshop you're going to need some spray stains and oxides. I'm going to use either spray stains, bundle sage, rusty hinge, peacock feathers, and vintage photo, and some ground espresso. And from the oxides there's just 3: peacock feathers, vintage photo, and bundle sage. You'll also need some paints. So we're going to create a rust effect, and to do that you need a brown, an orange, and a black. So I'm using black soot, carved pumpkin, and ground espresso. I might also use a little bit of walnut stain. And then we need some white paint. So you can either use picket fence or any other white acrylic paint that you may have on hand. Okay, we're going to add some effects with a distressed crown. We're going to use the walnut stain. And then we're going to do a little bit of some embossing glaze to create some effects, and we'll use the hickory smoke, and you'll need some clear embossing ink to add to that as well. Right, you'll also need a piece of mixed media paper. I'm using Vicky Bouton's mixed media cardstock. We're just going to work with one photo, so you need a 10 by 15, and you can mat that onto a light cardstock, 10.5 by 15.5, and dark 11 by 16. We'll just put that aside for now. Okay, and then I've also asked that you have a selection of stamps and stencils. So I'm going to be using this Vicky Bouton stencil and a stencil from Tim Holtz. So just a very open one, and then this one just to add some splatters and effects. And then the stamps that I'll be using are from a cool faded type, also from Tim Holtz. And then I have these stamps that have got there's a little bit of text and some tickets and just a few extra things. And I'm not sure if I'll use it, but I always have my script stamp on hand. You never know when that's going to come in handy. Right, you will also need a title. I'm going to title my page Dream Big Little One. It's going to be my title. You are going to need some embellishments. So I'm going to work with our grey board, our gear up, and frame it. I'm going to colour those. And then I do have the arrows from previous projects on hand in case I want to use something from there. And then I have a selection of flowers that I'm going to use to embellish as well. Okay, I made mine, but you are welcome to use ready-made ones. You'll need a heat tool, an embossing gun, and some paper towels, some paint brushes, some water in a spritzer bottle, and then to add ink to the surface you're going to need a piece of acetate. Okay, it's just a nice way to be able to add ink to your background. And then to ink around the edges, we're going to use some ground espresso distress oxide. I might even use some of the ground espresso, the paint to go around the edges. We'll see. Okay, so you need to gather up your supplies, have everything close in hand so that you can get the thingies that you need, and I will see you in a bit. We're going to start with the background, just so that it has time to dry properly before we add all the little embellishments that we're going to use. And what I would do is I already know that I want to have my photograph. I want it approximately over here. So if I give you the measurement, so we want to place the photograph more or less 9 centimeters from the left of the page and about 8 centimeters from the bottom of the page. That's more or less where it's going to go. You can make little marks around so that you know where your ink, because we're just going to create our own inked background, so we know more or less where the ink's going to go and where we need to place the photo once we're done. Okay, so we're just going to apply ink to the background using the kissing technique. I will trim off the perforated edge once I'm done, ready to assemble my page. Okay, Vicky Bruton's paper does have a front and a back, and the best way to tell is to leave the perforation on. The part where you can feel the embossed area, raised area, is the back. Where you can feel the indent is the front. So that just helps with using your product on her paper. Right, so we're going to start by creating a background using our oxides. I'm going to start off, stains. I'm going to start off by using an oxide and a spray stain. I'm going to work with the peacock feathers first, then I'm going to add a little bit of rusty hinge to that, and I'm then going to add a little bit of vintage photo, and we'll see how we go with a bundle sage. These are the colors I'm going to start with and see what I get. Like I said, I'm going to use the acetate, a piece of acetate, to apply the ink using the kissing technique to my background. So you know that the oxides need to be shook up quite well before you use them. If you can see, I've still got a bit of ink, my mica stuck at the bottom, so I'm just going to give them all a good shake and then we can get started. Okay, I'm going to just add a little bit of water to my background. It just makes for my inks to move a little bit better. So I've just given it a light mist, and I'm going to put some ink on my acetate. So we're just going to drop some ink on here. I'm going to add some oxide and a little bit of the stain, all in peacock feathers next to each other, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush, add some water to that. I'm going to use the brush to break it up, so I'm going to have the oxide go up and the stain go here, and they can join slightly in the middle, right? And then just going to turn that, get that ink to drip, and then just rock my paper, rock the acetate to get some ink onto my paper. Okay, you can see where it makes the little how you can use the acetate to roll to get ink where you want it to be. There we go, I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm going to just leave that on there for a bit. I'll take this off here. Get ready to add the next color. So I don't quite like the lines that are being created, and with that you can use your water to move it so we can break it up. Okay, and you can also then take the brush and use your brush to just move that ink a little bit more to where you want it to be. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm quickly going to heat set that. Okay, it's quite dry. I'm going to go in and add, just pick up any water droplets, just using a paper towel to pick up any excess water on my page, any ink, just to get it. I don't need it bone dry, but I do just want most of it off the page. So there we go. So now we're going to add the next color, and I'm thinking that I'm going to add some rusty hinge and vintage photo at the top, but we'll do them separately. So I'm going to use rusty hinge distress spray. I want to get some on my, there we go. Right, and I'm going to use the water to break that up. There's a good amount on there. So make sure your brush is clean. I'm just going to use the brush then to break up this ink. We can add a little bit more water to that. Okay, and I'm going to start by just adding some splatters. Right. And then we can add the ink. It is a strong color. I have quite a bit of ink on my acetate. I'm going to move it around on the acetate a bit first as well. I can get it spread out. Okay. And then let it drip. And then just move that around using the acetate. Okay. Let's bring it this way. Remember, if you use your nail or something sharp on here, the line that you make with your nail or your sharp will just stay on here. You won't get it to go away. Just makes a permanent mark. So I'm just aiming to get my ink in this corner. Remember, you can see how the ink sticks to the plastic, and you can use that then to manipulate it exactly where you want it to be. I don't quite like the straight line that gets created over here. So again, I can just use my acetate to move that ink around. Okay. While it's wet, I can still create really awesome shapes. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to add a little bit just a little bit down in this corner here. Not too much. There we go. Right, so then again I can then just use the acetate to maneuver the ink around like that. Okay. Just going to leave that to sit for a little while. While I'm waiting for that, I can clean up my piece of acetate. Right, so before that ink dries on my page, I'm going to add a little bit of Vintage Photo oxide. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up. I'm just going to drop it into that rusty hinge where there's pools of ink. Here there aren't any, so we're going to add some water to that. Alright, and just leave it for a bit so that it can do its thing. I'm going to get a bigger brush, add some water to my acetate. I'm going to pick up that water and then just use that water then to break up some of the ink, just to get it to move a little bit more. Okay. See how nice it is? Right, then here we can just add some water. Remember, water and this ink are your friend. And we can just maneuver that around a little bit. So when I dry that now, the Vintage Photo oxide spray will oxidize, and we'll get a bit of that chalky effect coming through. So I'm going to quickly heat set that. There you go, nice, vibrant. You can see how the Vintage Photo oxide spray has oxidized over there and over here. So I just want to intensify this peacock feathers, so I'm going to add a little bit more to my page. I'm just going to use a little bit of the oxide spray, and then I'm going to add quite a bit of the spray stain. I'm going to spray it on. Okay, so nice and intense. I'll use my brush. Make sure I've got all the brown off of it. And I'm just going to break this ink up a bit. Activate it with some water. Look at that. Okay. And then aim my acetate for my blue. There we go. And just here and there, just intensify the blue or the peacock feathers that's underneath already. There we go. Remember, we can just add a bit of pressure to get that ink to move. There we go. Much better. And then just take it out to the top there. Very nice. There you go. I'd like it to just blend a little bit more here, so I can add my acetate and then just use my fingers to get that ink to move. And then where I've created my line, just go in and work the ink. There we go. I'm happy with that. Clean up my piece of acetate. And then we can just go in and pick up the little blobs before we dry, so I can get more of an even color going through. And then I would like to go in and just splatter on some of the oxide. Like that. And I'm going to heat set that again. And there you go. I think that's going to be, I'm going to call it for the background. When I know I would like to go in and add a little bit of stenciling and stamping. So I know that that's going to go over there. And I'm just going to double check that my flower colors are still going to, oh yes, everything's still going to work very, very nicely. Okay. So I know that when I stencil and stamp, I'd like to soften this a little bit. So we'll get to that. Right, I'm just going to, we're going to use a blending tool. I need my blending tool, I need my acetate, and I need the stencil that I plan to use. Right. I think we'll put this over here. Like that, and I'm going to stencil on with Vintage Photo Distress Oxide. So all I'm going to do is remember it's a very wet ink, I'm just going to put some on my acetate, and I'm going to use my blending tool. I've used this one with the Vintage Photo before, so it's already got the Vintage Photo on it. I'm going to put my stencil more or less where I think I want it to be, and I'm going to pick this ink up. Remember, it's going to be very wet, so there's quite a bit of ink that's on my stencil. So when you go to apply, tap tap to be sure that you get off quite a bit of the ink, because if I just put pressure and started to blend, it's going to run underneath my stencil. Once you've tapped off enough, you can then go in and add it to your stencil like that. Okay, go and pick up some more ink, tap tap, and work it in. Okay. So that's all still going to work quite nicely when I have my photo in, and when my flowers come in, it's all still going to work very nicely, and with my title. Okay, and then we can add a few splatters. So we can maybe have that. It can show behind, it can come in over there. Okay, so this time I'm going to use the ink pad. So I'm using the same color, but I just want a different shade. So I'll pick up the ink on the ink pad, and I think we'll put it in about over here. Perfect. And here's my corners, so I think I'm going to put another one in over here. I'm picking ink up off the ink pad, And we can put it in over here. So even though I'm using the same color, I'm getting a different shade because I'm using the ink pad now instead of the stain, the spray, the oxide spray. And there we go. I think we need some dots over here. And maybe a few over there. Right. So the one thing I forgot to tell you you would need working with your stamps is an archival ink. I'm going to use black soot archival ink to stamp with. So I always forget something, but I'm going to use the archival ink. Right, and then I'm going to just put my photo mat back in place so that I know more or less where it's going to be. So I know that I've got I've got flowers going up over here. I know that my title is going to go over here. So I'm going to add a little bit of stamping just to this side and a little bit over there and some down here. All right. So let's see. I think this is going to be a good one to use. Yeah. So I'm going to use that one to create a little bit of background. I have my stamping block. Not the best size, but it'll do. I don't want a perfect stamp. So there we go. Ink up my stamp. Here's my corner for my photo mat. And I'm just going to pop that in over there. Okay, that's good. Just a nice light, just a little bit of black and pattern. There's my other mark at the top there, so I think we'll add the stamp over here. And I'm going to put another one over here. There we go. And this one, I think I'm going to take it up over here. Okay. And then with this one, I can maybe add this little ticket. There's my little stamping block. There we go. I'm just going to put it on so that I have it on straight at least. And I think we'll put it on over here. And another one this way. Maybe here. Okay. And again over here. What? Okay. Another one. So just very light and just to add something to the background, because I am going to fill it up with embellishments. So that's going to go over there like that. That's about it for my background. I'm going to quickly make the embellishments that go with this.